Have you ever met someone who doesn't just achieve things but also earns respect wherever they go? Someone who seems calm, centered, and reliable no matter how chaotic life gets. That's the power of ethics in action, and one of the most practical guides to living with ethics, discipline, and values is a book you have probably heard of, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. This book isn't just about success, it's about principled success. Covey teaches that effectiveness isn't a technique or a trick, it's a way of living that aligns your action with timelines, moral principles, honesty, responsibility, respect, and fairness. So, in today's episode, let's walk through these 7 habits one by one and understand how each habit connects deeply with ethics and moral strengths. Time for habit number 1, be proactive. Covey starts with a simple truth: you're responsible for your own life. Being proactive means taking charge of your actions, your emotions, and your reactions. It's about focusing on what you can control instead of blaming circumstances or other people. He calls this our circle of influence, the things we can actually do something about. When we live reactively, we give our power away. But when we live proactively, we live by principles, not moods. Ethically, this means accountability. It's saying, I won't lie because the situation is hard. I won't shift blame because it's easy. I will choose what's right, not what's convenient. That's moral maturity, the ability to respond with integrity instead of impulse. I'm not a product of my circumstances. I'm a product of my decisions. What ethical lesson you learn from this habit is integrity begins with responsibility. You can't lead others until you can lead your own self. That's the most important ethical lesson which we get through habit number 1 as proposed in the book The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That is, be proactive. Time for habit number 2. Begin with the end in mind. This habit is all about purpose. Covey says everything is created twice, first in the mind, then in reality. So before you live your life, you must define what truly matters. Ask yourself, what do I want to be remembered for? What values do I want people to associate with my name? Covey even suggests visualizing your own funeral, not to be morbid, but to remind you what kind of legacy you want to leave behind. When you live with the end in mind, you start making ethical choices naturally, because you're guided by principles, not temptations. If your goal is respect, you won't lie. If your goal is contribution, you won't cheat. If your goal is love, you won't exploit. The ethical lesson that we learn through this habit, that is, begin with the end in mind, is true success is not achievement without conscience. It's about living today the way you would be proud to be remembered tomorrow. Habit number 3, put first things first. It's all about priorities. Now that you know what's important, this habit teaches you to live by priorities, not by pressure. Covey divides life into 4 quadrants, where he suggests or puts quadrant 1 as urgent and important, second as important but not urgent, third as urgent but not important, fourth as neither. Now the first quadrant, which is urgent and important, this is both urgent as well as important. This is something that we have during our crisis. Whatever crisis we face in our life, all of those crises are both urgent and important. Second quadrant, which says important but not urgent, it is mainly you can associate this with growth, your relationships, your ethics, which are important. Your relationships are important, your ethics are important, but somehow we don't feel they are urgent, and they genuinely are not urgent. It's a choice, it's a personal choice, but they are important. Third quadrant is urgent but not important. These things are, for example, distractions. Distractions build urgency, but those are not important, but still they are urgent. Your distractions, they become urgency. For example, if a new iPhone is launched, that's a distraction for you. Owning a new iPhone becomes urgency for you. It's not important that you should own a new iPhone, But again, it becomes urgent because you want to, because it's a distraction. The fourth quadrant is neither. It's neither urgent nor important. Now, what most people do is most people live reacting to the urgent, the third quadrant, where it's not important, but okay, we have to do it, so it's urgent, so we will do it. That's the main issue. Most people, since because most people live reacting to the urgent, a lot of wrong decisioning, a lot of unethical things continue to happen. Highly effective and ethical people, on the other hand, invest in what truly matters. They stay in quadrant 2. They deal with things that are important but not urgent. For example, relationships. They invest in what truly matters, such as relationships, growth, integrity, and contribution. In ethics, this habit means choosing principle over pressure. So, if you choose important over urgency, it means you choose principles over pressure. You might be tempted to take a shortcut because of a deadline or to hide a mistake because of fear, but when you put first things first, truth, fairness, and trust, you stay aligned with your values even when it's hard. The key is not to prioritize your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. The major ethical lesson that we get through this habit, the third habit, which is put first things first, is moral discipline means choosing what's right, not what's urgent. Now, the habit number 4 is think win-win. This is one of the most powerful ethical principle Covey teaches. He says in every relationship, you can either think win-lose, lose-win, or win-win. Win-lose means I must win, you must lose. Lose-win means I'll sacrifice my values for peace. But win-win says let's find a way where both of us can benefit. That's the essence of ethical negotiation. Fairness, respect, and mutual benefit. It's not about competition, it's about cooperation. Covey reminds us that character is the foundation of a win-win. It requires integrity, it requires maturity, and it requires a very, very broad mindset so that you can keep your commitments, you can balance your courage as well as considerations. It also requires believing that someone else's success doesn't reduce yours. This is the biggest problem in our generation. We feel if someone becomes successful, it will reduce our own success, our own living purpose. Now, the ethical lesson that we learn through this habit, that is think win-win, is win-win thinking, it builds trust. This thinking builds trust. The moment you choose fairness over fear, you elevate the entire relationship. Habit number 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. This is about empathy, one of the most purest moral skills. Most people listen to reply, not to understand. Covey challenges that. He says true communication starts with listening with intent to understand. When you genuinely try to understand others, their fears, their pain, their perspective, you build trust. And trust is the foundation of every ethical relationship, be it personal, be it professional. In today's world, where everyone wants to be heard, listening has become a moral act. When you understand first, people open up. Conflicts reduce, solutions become fairer, and even if you disagree, you do it with a respect. That's why we say criticize, but constructive criticism is important. Similarly, disagree, but you should have a reason for disagreement. It should be done in a respectful manner. Now, it's very important to kind of seek first to understand, then to be understood. Firstly, understand. Once you understand what other has to say, they will understand what you have to say. It's this life is all about give and take, as simple as that. Now, the ethical lesson here is empathy is not a weakness, it's wisdom. It turns arguments into understanding and differences into dialogues. Now, habit 6 is synergize. Synergy means creative cooperation. It's the belief that 1 plus 1 can be greater than 2. When people value differences instead of fearing them. In ethical terms, synergy is respect in action. It's saying Your perspective matters as much as mine. Covey explains that synergy comes from genuine teamwork, open mindedness, and the courage to value diversity. In workplaces and societies, when people synergize ethically, they don't manipulate or dominate. They collaborate, they cooperate, and they innovate. They create solutions that are fair and sustainable. The ethical lesson here is ethics thrives in teamwork. When you honor diversity, you build unity. Now, habit number 7 is sharpen the saw. The final habit is about renewal, keeping yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually strong. Kavi says you can't pour from an empty cup, can you? You can't, right? Ethical living requires energy, reflection, and balance. Take care of your body, it keeps you disciplined. Take care of your mind, it keeps you wise. Take care of your heart, it keeps you kind. And take care of spirit, it keeps you moral. He reminds us that ethics isn't a one time act, it's a lifelong commitment, something we sharpen every day through reflection, reading, and right action. It's okay to be wrong sometimes, but it's important to learn from that wrong and never repeat it. The ethical lesson here is renewal is moral strength in disguise. The more you work on yourself, the more ethical your choices become. Let's take a moment and reflect. These 7 habits aren't just self help tools, they're ethical pillars for life. Be proactive, take responsibility. Begin with the end in mind, live by values. Put first things first, prioritize integrity. Think win win, act with fairness. Seek first to understand, practice empathy. Synergize, respect diversity. Sharpen the saw, stay balanced and reflective. If you live by these habits, success will follow. Not just external success, but inner peace, which is the most important thing in everyone's life. Because in the end, ethics isn't about being perfect. It's about choosing what's right again and again until it becomes who you are. Thank you for listening. If this summary, if this message inspired you somehow, subscribe to Competitive Pro and continue your journey through our Ethics and Moral Values series, where we learn to grow not just in knowledge but in character. Remember, greatness begins with goodness and goodness begins with a choice. So make a right choice and subscribe to Competitive Pro because that's going to be your first right choice. See you in next video. Thank you.